I want to start today with something that happened to me a few months ago. I got a phone call, out of the blue. A former client, the CFO of a manufacturing company in Jurong. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. He said, "Jack, a friend of mine is setting up a new holding company. He needs a good accountant. I told him to call you."
Just like that?
Just like that. No LinkedIn message, no follow-up email campaign, no event where I'd strategically positioned myself. He just called. And I asked him, "David, why me? We haven't worked together in 2 years." And he said, "Because you're the only accountant who ever explained something to me in a way I actually understood."
That's one moment 2 years ago?
One specific moment. 2 years later, one referral. And that's what I want to unpack today. Because I think most accounting professionals, most auditors, spend a lot of time on the wrong kind of networking. And the right kind, you might already be doing it without realizing it.
And I'll be honest, I've been pretty skeptical about networking ever since I went to an ISCA mixer last quarter. Spent the whole evening exchanging business cards, connected with 7 people on LinkedIn, got 2 responses. Nothing came of it.
That's exactly the experience I want to talk about. Because there's a version of networking that looks like work. Events, badges, card holders, and then there's the version that actually produces results. They're almost completely different activities. Welcome back to The Balance Sheet Guy. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jenny. We're here every week talking about accounting, auditing, and the professional English you need to work confidently in international environments. Today's topic? Networking, specifically for people in our profession.
And here's where I want to leave you by the end of today. I want you to have a completely different answer to the question, how do I build my professional network? Not a longer answer, not a more detailed event schedule. A fundamentally different framework. One that for some people is going to feel uncomfortable because it means the thing you thought was networking might not be. And the thing you thought was just doing your job probably is.
That's a big promise.
It is. And to explain it, I'm going to start with something a very senior partner told me early in my career. He said, "Jack, your work will network for you." I thought it was one of those things older people say that sounds wise but means nothing. Today, I understand exactly what he meant. We'll come back to that. But first, let's talk about why the event approach doesn't work.
So let's set the scene. You go to a networking event, an accounting association dinner, industry conference. You meet 30 people. You have the same conversation 30 times. Where do you work? What do you do? Do you have a card? And then?
And then, nothing. Or almost nothing. The reason is actually quite simple. You're meeting people who don't know your work. They know your name, they know your firm, they know your elevator pitch. But they don't know how you handle pressure. They don't know how you behave at 11 p.m. when a client has a data problem. They don't know whether you make life easier or harder for the people around you.
And that's the thing people actually remember.
Exactly. Think about your own professional network right now. Not your LinkedIn connections, your actual network. The people who helped your career, who gave you a referral, who vouched for you, who recommended you for a project. Where did most of them come from?
Former colleagues, honestly. My old supervisor at my first firm, a manager I worked with in my second year, people I actually worked alongside.
Not event contacts.
No. And now that I think about it, the colleague I pulled 3 late nights with during a difficult year-end close, I still know exactly where she's working. I'd pick up the phone for her in a second.
Because you've seen each other work. You know how the other person behaves under real conditions. That shared experience, under actual pressure, with actual stakes, creates a different kind of professional bond. Something that a 90-minute cocktail event cannot replicate.
This is actually a mistake I see all the time, and I've made it myself, treating networking as a separate activity from work, like it's something you do on Thursday evenings. But if what you're saying is right, The real networking is happening during regular work hours.
Every day, every call where you explain something clearly, every time you send a response that actually solves the problem instead of just answering the question. Every moment where you help a colleague through a difficult situation, even when it's not strictly your problem, that is networking. You're building your professional reputation in real time. Good auditors build genuine knowledge of the client's business, not surface knowledge, real understanding. Clients feel the difference between an auditor who actually understands their business and one who's just following a checklist.
I had that experience a couple of years ago. Singapore Trading Company. I was helping with their year-end management accounts. There was a question about how to present some intercompany balances, whether they should be current or non-current on the balance sheet. The CFO kept asking me about it, and I remember spending almost an extra hour after our regular call just explaining it. Not in accounting terms, I literally drew it out on a shared screen. Here's your balance sheet, here's where this number lives, here's why it matters.
And did that feel like networking while you were doing it?
It felt like I was running behind on my other work, honestly.
Right. But that's the hour he remembered. And that's the mechanics of word of mouth in accounting. It's not a general impression. Oh, she's good. It's a specific memory. She spent an extra hour explaining this to me on a Friday evening. That specific moment is what gets told to the next person.
Which means every one of those moments is a potential referral. You just don't know which ones will matter.
And that's exactly why the framework has to change. You can't optimize for which moments will matter. You can only optimize for being genuinely useful as a default.
So, to capture what we've covered, most professional networks in accounting, the ones that actually produce results, come from within the industry itself. Former colleagues, former managers, past clients, not from events, not from cold LinkedIn connections. Because those intra-industry relationships are built on something events can't replicate. Direct experience of how you actually work.
And the currency of that network is not how often you show up somewhere. It's whether you were genuinely useful, specifically useful, at moments that mattered.
I want to pause here and say something directly to listeners who think of themselves as introverted, or who hate small talk, or who feel anxious at events. This framework is for you. You don't have to become a different person. You have to be excellent at what you already do, and helpful when it costs you something to be helpful.
Exactly right. Okay, if today's episode is landing for you, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening. And we have a question for you in the comments today. We'll get to it at the end. Stay with us, because in the next section, I want to get specific. There are three concrete behaviors that create those memorable professional moments. The moments that 2 years later make someone pick up the phone and say your name.
So, 3 specific behaviors. What are they?
Okay, so here's where it gets really practical. I've spent 10 years in accounting. I've received referrals, I've made referrals. And when I trace back why any given referral happened, there are really 3 things. The first one, you explained something clearly. A complex issue, an accounting standard, a tax position, a regulatory requirement. And you explained it in a way a non-accountant actually understood. Not showing off your knowledge, actually making the other person understand.
And that's harder than it sounds. Because early in my career, I thought explaining something in full technical detail proved I was competent. More jargon, more impressive.
And the opposite is true.
The opposite is completely true. The person who can take a complicated issue and give someone a clear, simple answer, that person is the one who gets remembered. I learned that the hard way.
The second behavior, you helped with a tight deadline without making it a drama. We all have those moments. Closing is tomorrow. There's an issue. Someone needs help and they need it now. The accounting professionals who show up in those moments,
who say, let's stay on this call and sort it out, those people create a different kind of impression.
That one hits home. I had a situation at my old firm. A colleague of mine, Marcus, was on a year-end audit. The client had a reconciliation issue at 11 p.m. I happened to still be at the office. I helped him chase it down. It took 2 hours. But Marcus now refers work to me regularly. Every time someone in his network needs a freelance accountant in Singapore context, he sends them my way. And it all traces back to that one night.
Not a networking event. An 11 p.m. reconciliation.
Not even my client. Not even my audit.
And the third thing. This one sounds simple, but it's actually the most underrated. You didn't make life difficult for someone when they needed you. You were cooperative when it would have been easy not to be. You gave someone information without making them feel like they were imposing. You turned around a question fast. You explained something twice without making the person feel bad for needing to hear it twice.
That's enormous in audit. Because the auditor-client relationship is naturally tense. There are information requests, deadlines, friction, and the auditors who figure out how to get what they need without making the client feel interrogated, those are the ones whose engagement letters get signed without a fight, whose clients say nice things about them to other CFOs.
Exactly. And now, let me show you what this sounds like in practice. Jenny, I want to walk through a scenario. You've told me about your Singapore trading company client, the one where you spent an hour explaining that classification issue.
The David story.
The David story. Fast forward 2 years. What does that conversation actually sound like when he calls? Workplace scenario. The referral call. Setting. Jenny is working from home on a Tuesday afternoon. She receives a WhatsApp message from David Tan, former CFO of Pacific Trade, a Singapore trading company she worked with 2 years ago on a receivables classification issue. She calls back.
Jenny, thanks for calling back so quickly. I'll get straight to the point. A close friend of mine, Michael, is setting up a new Singapore holding company, 3 subsidiaries, Singapore and Malaysia. He needs someone to handle the accounting and statutory reporting properly from the start. I was thinking of you for this.
David, that's very kind. I'm definitely interested in learning more. Could you walk me through a little bit about Michael's situation? What stage is the company at?
They're incorporating next quarter. He comes from a private equity background, so he understands finance, but not local compliance. He'll need consolidated accounts, XBRL filing with ACRA, and probably some accounting standards compliance work as they grow. He wants to do it right.
Got it. That's very much in my wheelhouse. Can I ask, what made you think of me specifically? I know we haven't been in touch for a while.
Honestly, I still think about that call we had. The one where you walked me through the classification issue with our trade receivables. You spent almost an hour on the phone with me. You drew it out on the screen. You made me actually understand what we were doing and why. That really stuck with me. I knew you'd take that same approach with Michael.
That means a lot to hear, David. I do remember that call. I know it ran over.
It was worth every minute for me. Anyway, I'd be happy to make an introduction if you're interested. I can copy both of you on an email this afternoon.
I'd appreciate that very much. And David, I'll make sure to manage Michael's expectations on timelines when we first speak. Setting up consolidation reporting properly does take time, and I want him to understand that from the beginning.
That's exactly the kind of thing I wanted him to hear from someone I trust. I'll send that intro today. Good luck, Jenny.
All right. Let's debrief that. What struck you in that conversation?
The specificity. David didn't say you were very professional or your work was good quality. He named a specific call, a specific issue. The trade receivables, the screen share. He remembered the details.
And that's because that's how professional memory actually works. We don't remember people generally. We remember moments. Which is why every time you go the extra mile for someone, that's a potential specific memory you're creating. You just don't know when it activates.
And the phrasing at the end, I'll manage Michael's expectations on timelines. That felt natural in the moment, but it's actually a really important professional move, right?
It's the difference between starting an engagement well and starting it with unrealistic assumptions. If Michael thinks the consolidation setup takes 2 weeks and it actually takes 2 months, you've created a problem before you've even issued an invoice.
But wait, there's something we haven't talked about yet. And I think it's actually the most liberating part of this whole framework. You don't have to maintain every relationship constantly. You don't have to send quarterly check-in emails. You don't have to comment on every LinkedIn post.
That's a relief, honestly.
The relationship can go quiet for a year, 2 years, and then someone has a problem and they think of you because of one specific moment, one specific thing you did that made their life easier. That memory doesn't expire. If anything, it sharpens with time because they've compared you to other people since, and they remember which one of you was actually useful when it mattered.
And I think this is especially relevant for the Singapore context, because the accounting community there is genuinely small. The Big Four are hiring from the same universities, the same pool. CFOs move from company to company. Finance directors become clients. Senior managers become partners at different firms. Everybody has worked with everybody or knows somebody who has.
Which means your reputation is circulating whether you're managing it or not. The question is what's circulating?
And for Vietnamese accountants working remotely with Singapore clients, this matters even more. You're not in the office. You're not at the coffee catch-ups. So what goes ahead of you is entirely made of the impressions you've left on the people you've actually worked with. When a Singapore CFO recommends a Vietnamese accountant to a peer, they don't say our Vietnam team. They say a name, a specific person, because of something specific that person did.
Let me give you a real example of what this looks like in practice. I know of a Vietnamese accountant working remotely who handles consolidated accounts for 3 Singapore clients. She didn't find any of them through a job board or an event. The first client came through a referral from her former supervisor at an accounting firm. The second came through that client's CFO, who recommended her to a peer at another company. The third, the CFO of the second client mentioned her by name at a board meeting when someone asked about reliable remote accounting support. Same person, 3 clients, 0 events.
Pure word of mouth, built on consistent quality and genuine helpfulness.
Built on being useful, specifically memorably useful. And now I want to come back to what my senior partner told me. Your work will network for you. Here's what he meant. If you are consistently excellent, if you explain things clearly, if you show up for people in difficult moments, if you make working with you easy instead of hard, your work goes ahead of you into rooms you will never enter, into conversations you will never hear. A client mentions you to a colleague. A colleague mentions you to a hiring manager. A former supervisor mentions you to a partner at a different firm. You're not in the room, but you're in the conversation. That's what your work networks for you actually means.
That's a much better visual than a business card stack.
Much better.
And here's the flip side, because this is important. Networking in accounting is not about attending every industry dinner. It's not about having a perfectly optimized LinkedIn profile with 500 connections. It's not even about staying in careful, strategic touch with everyone you've ever worked with. It's about being genuinely and specifically useful at the moments that cost you something. That's what gets remembered. That's what gets told to the next person.
3 takeaways. You want to take us home, Jack?
Happy to. Takeaway number 1, the concept. Your professional network in accounting and auditing is built primarily by people who have seen you work. Former colleagues, former managers, former clients. The relationships that generate referrals come from shared experience under real conditions,
And specifically, from moments when you were genuinely, specifically useful to someone. That's the foundation.
Takeaway number 2, a phrase. From the workplace scenario today, I want to highlight one in particular. I'd be happy to make an introduction. Not I can connect you, not let me send your contact details. I'd be happy to make an introduction. Use this when you want to refer a colleague or friend. It's warm, professional, and it signals that you're personally vouching for them. That's the weight behind the word introduction here.
And takeaway number 3, the confidence builder. The next time you spend 30 extra minutes explaining a complex accounting requirement to a client who doesn't have an accounting background, the next time you stay on a call to help a colleague with a tight deadline, even though technically it's not your problem, the next time you answer a question twice without making the person feel bad for asking twice, that is networking. You're building your professional reputation in real time. You just didn't have a name for it before.
And I'll add one more thought. For those of you working across the Vietnam-Singapore corridor remotely, you don't have the advantage of proximity. You can't be in the office. You can't grab coffee. What you can do is be the person who explains things clearly on every call, who sends clean work on every deadline, who responds fast when someone has a problem. Over time, that reputation builds itself.
Your work goes ahead of you. Let it.
Okay, here's our question for the comments this week. Think back over your career. Is there a specific moment, a specific person who went out of their way for you professionally? Not generally was supportive. What did they actually do? A specific action at a specific time that you've never forgotten. Tell us below. We'd love to hear it. And if this episode gave you a different way to think about your professional network, share it with one colleague who might need to hear it.
That is the word of mouth version of supporting this show. We appreciate it more than you know. Until next week, keep adding value. The network is paying attention.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Jack. See you next time.
Key phrases used. I was thinking of you for this. A warm, personal way to open a referral conversation signals the recommender has made a specific judgment call, far more powerful than a transactional job post. Could you walk me through? Polite, professional way to ask someone to explain a situation, more natural than "can you tell me about," and signals genuine interest. That really stuck with me. How native English speakers describe a specific memory that left a lasting impression. Use this when explaining why a particular moment mattered. I'd be happy to make an introduction. The natural, professional offer of a referral. Note make an introduction, not connect you or link you up. I appreciate you thinking of me. The gracious professional response to a referral shows genuine warmth without being overly effusive.